Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Jeff and Paper Gary. It is Saturday, February 7th. No long intro today, just going to continue working on the rudder. So getting the stiffeners installed and then seeing what's next. I know that I do have at least one rivet so far that we're going to have to drill out and replace, but no big deal. So tune in, let's see what we learn.
Well, folks, I can definitively say that there was a whole lot to learn from this process. So let's dig into it. First thing, back riveting, right? The absolute easiest, best, and favorite way to take care of rivets. Man, if they could all be that easy. Even then, they're not foolproof. So as you saw in the intro, there was a little bit of work necessary to go drill one out. Just wasn't careful, let the metal lift up and push the rivet through and did the thing. So no big deal. The rest of these things went in really well. You do, as you can see, you have to push that metal up a little bit towards the end of those things. So don't be afraid. Just push the metal out of the way. Not that big a deal. They go in pretty easy. And so far for the back riveting of these stiffeners, right? Pretty easy, pretty simple process. I will say I like the wall-safe Scotch tape that I used a lot better than the masking tape that I used previously. It comes off much easier, and I think that it's a thinner tape, but it's also a little bit stronger, and so I think that the masking tape almost adds like a little bit of cushion, if you will. So I really like the Scotch tape better. I went on like Amazon or whatever and just bought, like 6 rolls of it. So I'm sure I'll use it in the future. And that's really all there is to it. So rivet those things in place. I always do like a little sanity check. Make sure you're looking at the other one that's, I guess, opposite on the other side of that thing so that you're not by any chance putting the wrong one in the wrong place or putting them in an orientation where they're going to clash with one another. So you'll see like the flange side is pointing one direction. On this side, on the opposite or opposing side, they're facing the other direction, so they kind of go together. Not quite like scissors, but not clashing with one another either. So that's really it. Where the learning comes in on this one is as we get past the skin and into the skeletal structure, we'll call it. So we'll get to that here shortly, and there's just some assembly things that we should watch for, and some things that we need to be aware of, and some lessons that I forgot. So here's me just drilling out that one last rivet that was not set correctly, and putting a new one back in there, and everything went fine. With the skeleton, we'll talk about this, right? So it goes together, and the instructions aren't very clear. And as we know, if we're Vans builders, we're getting into an area where the directions just get less and less detailed, and they just expect you to know these things and figure these things out. So here we go. Before we get into that skeletal part, let's talk about this for a minute. I kind of forgot this was in here. This is the brake, if you will, that will build to bend the metal, and I say bend, finish bending or complete the bend of your control surfaces. So your rudder, your elevators, probably the trim tab, I think it's the same treatment. I think maybe the ailerons probably do in the future, but I haven't looked at those yet. This is pretty simple. It's just a couple of 2x8s. I think in my case, I actually use 2x10s. And a couple of door hinges, and here you see me taking them back apart because I realize it's far too difficult for one person to try to affix that to the table when they're both assembled. So no real rocket science here. I just made sure that the top edge of this board, and there was a little bit of a bow to it, so I clamped it in place. The top edge of the board is flush with your work surface. And you'll see me use a variety of squares here, right? A machinist square and the framing square, tapping it in place with a hammer and making sure that it is nice and flush there. And then just driving a couple 3-inch screws into the front of my workbench and then putting this all back together. So I put it in this orientation. You might see, and I'll talk about this later in the video, I like this orientation a little bit better. It works pretty well. And this is what is going to be used to bend what we'll call the trailing edge to get it down into its final shape. And we do that after we get those stiffeners put into place. So here's the process. You're going to see live action Jeff take over here in just a minute, and I will let him explain to you how this went. So stay tuned for that.
Okay, as you can see, I just did the bend. Now, I watched that Hippie Pilot, and I watched T-Flight 77 Tim do this before, and I told myself, well, I wasn't going to be scared. It's kind of one of those, I don't know, it's a little bit of an anxiety moment here. You're getting ready to bend this piece of metal that you've already put some work into, and bending it too far or creasing it makes it scrap metal. And so I watched them do it, and I think both of them said after they were done, it wasn't really that scary. You can really, it really takes a lot of force. It's hard to overbend this thing. So I just went for it, right? I didn't really even warm up, just kind of pushed in there, went slowly and checked. And I will tell you, it does take a considerable amount of force to bend this. Now, when we look at this brake that we built here, and it's, I'll call it brake, right? Those are pretty crude words. The instructions in the booklet do not tell you to put the 2x8s like this. They tell you to put them flat. And I watched, I think it was, I can't remember if it was that Hippie Pilot or T-Flight 77, one of those two, if not both of them, put them in this orientation because it gives you a lot more leverage to be able to grab hold of this and push and make that bend. Instead of having them flat where you'd have to be pushing down on it. So this worked well. I went with 2x10s instead of 2x8s, so maybe a little bit more leverage there, but still took a considerable amount of force. So overall, I think it turned out really nice. I got the the R704 and 703 ribs to get as kind of a gauge to see how close I am, and everything looks good. So the next stage of this is to get a straight edge on here and see if this has not buckled or bowed in any kind of way. And then there's some tuning tips on how to go fix that. So stay tuned. We'll keep pressing on.
So now you're going to see me come along here with a straight edge and checking for any of that buckling or bowing. And the instruction booklet there, the manual, gives you some detailed instructions on how to fix this. So as you can see, there's one area towards the top of the rudder there that had a little bit of buckling to it, or maybe bowing, I forget which one, that I was able to use the brake to go put a little bit more bend into it to get it there. And so this is really important. I have seen other videos where builders have gotten finished and they had, test flight problems and fluttering in their control surfaces and all that kind of thing, only to find out that they missed this step, skipped this step, or didn't do an adequate job, and they had buckling or bowing in the flight control surface, and then had to go whack with hammer and do some kind of tuning there. So take some time, make sure you get that one right. Now you see that we're moving into the spar for the rudder, and here's where we get a lot of the lessons learned, and there'll be a little bit of I don't want to call it prophecy, but something that's just a little comical. So as you go through there is a couple parts that you need to fabricate, and they show some images in the drawings, of course, of how to go make these. One of them is pretty simple. The other one is not quite as clear, but they're not all that complicated. Somehow I managed to screw one of them up. And you don't get a lot of extra material to go make these things twice. If you screw them up, you're going to go buy some more material. And so ultimately that is what I had to do. And it wasn't anything difficult. It was just me not having my head in the right place. And I somehow measured something an inch too short. So pay attention to your dimensions, double check everything, right? Like woodworking, right? Measure twice, cut once. And we go from there. So here, I brought the camera over to the vise because I really don't like to do off-camera work when I think there's lessons to be learned here. You have to radius the edges on these things, so you're making a little shim that goes in there. You got to radius those edges. And yeah, I could totally take it to the sander or the 3M Scotch-Brite wheel and do that. I kind of like to use the file, quite frankly. When it comes to metalwork, and the more metalwork that you're going to do, the file is a great tool for getting fine detailed shaping, and it's a skill that I don't go out of my way to perfect, but something that I do like to stay pretty proficient on. So it took some time there to just use the file and work those a little bit more. So as I'm going through here, I'm now looking at the pieces and I think ordering the material because I've come to the realization that I've cut one of these things too short and having to add some stuff on there. And you'll hear live action Jeff go into a little bit more detail as to what happened and how. But so far, right, unbeknownst to me, I think things are going along swimmingly here, and I'm about to go find reality is probably somewhat different. So stay tuned. Live action Jeff will be here in just a second.
Okay, so I want to take a minute to go into a little bit of detail of the rudder here. Some of this stuff is a little confusing for me. I just can't visualize it in my head, so I'm just trying to mock up things the best I can before I cut too much metal so I can see how this goes. The instructions, this is where the instructions or the directions get pretty fun. It just says, fabricate 717. And then it shows you this drawing, and I'll try to zoom in on this. So these instructions really aren't too bad, right? They give you some stock metal, 32 thousandths thickness, and you cut it to the length and the width, and then you'll match drill these holes. Pretty easy. This one as well, although as easy as this is, I somehow screwed it up and it's an inch short. So I'm going to be ordering a little bit of material, whatever. But the assembly of this is where things get kind of weird. One of the instructions in here says, oh, well, this one says use 702 as a guide, and I haven't seen 702 yet. I don't know what R702 is, so we'll get to that in a minute. That one's pretty easy to find when we go to this alternate view over here. So 702 is the spar, but I think that's really an 802. That might be I'm not sure where the typo is on that one, but 802 is a spar, so we'll match drill that. It goes in between the 802 spar and the 704 bottom rib. And then there's this horn brace, which is 710. This guy right here, which you have to trim, right? So I've got my cut line on here. I'm gonna go cut that in a little bit, remove that metal. And then you have this angular piece, which is over there, the 405 rudder horn. And then these two strips here, the 716 rudder bottom attached strips. I've got one that's good, I've got one that's screwed up, so I'll have to go make another one of those. Not a big deal. So I'm just a little unclear yet as to the match drilling. So we'll get there in a minute. It says 12x match drill using number 40, 801 pp as a guide. So 801 pp being the skin, I believe. So, but it also has to match the 704 rib. I'm banking that since those were punched, they're going to be spot on. So we'll go from there, get that figured out. Right now, we're off to remove these hatched areas on the 710 horn.
Okay, so if you guys are paying attention, on that shelf right above my head and just a little bit to the left is an Amazon box, and that'll come into play later. What I know to be in that Amazon box are the lead counterbalance weights for the rudder and for the elevators and the elevator horns. But we'll talk more about that later. So here I am shaping down this this bracket, if you will, that fits onto the spar, the rudder spar, and then the bottom rib of the rudder, and it sets that angle and acts as reinforcement, right? So what happened here, and again, I'll talk more in detail about this later with live action Jeff in our outro, but I didn't cut the part correctly. I cut it too much, and when I went to go put it in there, found out that part was no longer going to work. the spoiler alert that I'll give you in referencing that Amazon box is, unbeknownst to me at this time, this same exact part, yes, I had two of them that I had forgotten about, didn't realize it was in there, is sitting in that box. And so I screw this one up. I have the whole emotional reaction. I go and order a new one, and I wait for it to arrive, only to find out a week later that the part that I need is sitting up in that stupid Amazon box.
I think I've got this right. It's a little bit of a stack up here, and I don't know if you can see that we've got the spar and the angle bracket, and then one of those small shims goes down here at the bottom side to make up for the difference in thickness from the 704 rib that goes between spar and this bracket. And then the 710 horn, after being trimmed, all tucks inside there. So that's kind of how that stack up goes. I'm also now looking at this and very concerned. Oh, maybe not. Hang on, let's put some more Kukos in there. Okay, so once again, I know we have an edge distance problem here. So a little irritated at this one because there is no mention in the instructions and no real detail on how to cut this. It just goes from notch to notch, and then here we are. You find out that you're way past what is acceptable for edge distance. So I'm going to go ahead and mark these holes. I'm going to take this all apart, and I'm almost certain that my 710 here is going to be garbage because I can see the edge of it right here, and it gets dangerously close to that hole. So let's mark them up and see what happens. As expected, right there. So there's another piece ordered from Vans. There's another piece in the trash because there's not a note or some kind of indication or measurement or even a caution or warning to say, hey, be careful because you can take off too much material there and have no edge distance left. That's airplane building. That's what we learned today. Okay, friends, since Vans does not give you a warning or a note in the drawings or engineering, I will. Be very careful when trimming your R710. It just says trim R710, see details, and it tells you to go between those two little notches. Much like with the stiffeners and the rudder, apparently I trimmed a little too far. I guess I'm just not accustomed to the Vans instructions there and how that works, but I went too aggressive and I did not leave proper edge distance for my holes, as you can see. So there's another 25 bucks to the Vans company so that they can send me a new part. Hopefully that'll get here soon, and then I'll take a second shot at cutting it. But be very careful when trimming this. Read ahead and I guess try to look at that because this gets tucked in here to this assembly, and there's a picture of that there. But that will dictate the edge distance that is required for that part. So learn from me. Thanks, guys.